Today is about creating software simulations or software training in Captivate. So there are a couple of ways of doing software simulations and video demos, and we're going to go through all of the different ways, and as we go through the ways I'm going to point out some little tips and tricks, my favorite tips and tricks, and also look at some of the different ways that we can actually combine the different types of system training that you can do in Captivate. Now, one of my biggest things about creating any type of training, full stop, even software training, is that we need to obviously plan what we're going to record, and it's also a really good idea to go through the processes a couple of times, so you're not balking and you're not wondering, oh, what do I do next? So have a bit of a script, have a bit of a plan on what you're going to train. Now, this isn't about the actual software that I'm going to show you what we're training. This is about Captivate and the systems simulation. So I'm going to use a pretty basic example for today, and I'm going to use the same example for the different types of system training, just so you can see and compare the differences between them by using the same example, and it'll give you a very clear difference and comparison as to what the different outputs actually give you. So the example today is we're going to create some system training to show you how to insert a table into Microsoft Word. It's a 3x3 table. It's going to have a header row. The rows and columns are going to be evenly spaced. I'm going to show you how to add a new row using the tab key, and then we're going to shade the first row. So this is my script, and we'll go through, as I said, the different ways of recording this scenario in Captivate, and then we'll compare the different scenarios side by side with the same example. So that's my script. I've got Microsoft Word open. Any questions so far? We all good to go? Everyone got their seatbelts on? And I'm going to start. So normally when you obviously open Captivate, I've actually got the file from our last webinar open, because I'm going to use this shortly, because we're going to record a simulation into an existing file, and I'll get to that shortly. But what I'll do first of all is I'll just create a brand new file. I'll record a video demo into a brand new file, and then we'll record a software simulation into a brand new file, and then we'll look at recording a demo and a simulation into an existing file. And we're actually going to do it into a responsive file as well. I'm going to show you this little thing that pops up, which is quite a unique little feature of being able to do software simulations inside responsive projects. So more on that in a moment. But let's record a brand new demo. So we've got software simulation and we've got video demo. For those of you who saw the video that I put up yesterday as a little bit of an intro to this, the main difference between these two options is that video demo records a single video of all of your movement on the screen. So every breath you take, every mouse move you make, someone's watching you, and in actual fact it records in real time. It's like getting a video camera and placing it towards the monitor and recording your movements using a video camera. So it does literally record everything that you do, every pause, every page load, even if it's every crash. If your computer crashes or something freezes, it'll record that. If Captivate freezes, it probably won't record that, but that's another story for another day. So a video demo, as the name suggests, it's a video demonstration of what is actually being recorded on the screen. So let's have a look at this. So when we choose video demo, a couple of things pop up. You can record your screen area. So I'm just going to select screen area here, and you can choose the, yes, David, in answer to your question, you can export this video into Premiere, and I can quickly show you how to do that if you like as well. With the screen area, what that actually allows you to do, anything inside the red square will get recorded. So this red square is essentially the recording area, and that's what Captivate records. So you can choose to record full screen. So if I click full screen here, you can't quite see it, but the red square has literally gone all the way around the outside of my monitor, including the taskbar down the bottom, and everything gets recorded inside of that. Or I can choose a custom size, and depending on what my output is for, so do some homework beforehand, decide where this video is ultimately going to sit. If it's going to sit on YouTube, then you might want to make requirements for that. If it's going to go inside another learning piece, then you might want to consider that. So just be mindful of where this is going to fit. What I normally do, however, is I will focus on a particular application. So in this particular example, I'm going to select application, and you can then choose which application you want to record. So in this example here, I'm going to choose Word because I've already got Word open. And when you choose application, you've got this option that says snap to. Now what this means is that whatever size the red square is, so I'm actually changing the size of the red square, and what's happening is Word, the actual software that I'm recording, which is in this case is Microsoft Word, is actually adjusting itself to fit inside that red square. So you'll see that by dragging or changing the size of the red square, you'll see that these numbers are changing here. So as I change the size of the square, the software that I've chosen to record is adjusting itself to fit within that boundary. So this is what snap to means. So I'm snapping to the particular size that I've allowed. Now a couple of options here. I'll show you a quick little example of what these different options mean. I'm ultimately going to come back to one of these. I'm just going to choose say widescreen, and you'll notice that that automatically adjusts my dimensions, and Word has automatically resized itself. But say for example I was only interested in showing the toolbar, and I was just giving people a bit of a tour of the toolbar. Then what I could do here is I could select application region, and then as I hover my mouse over the particular bit of software that I've selected, in this case Word, you'll notice that the red recording area will automatically choose a particular region. So if I'm only interested in the document area, then I might choose that. If I'm interested in just the toolbar, I'll hover my mouse on top of the toolbar, and if I click, you'll now notice that what's going to happen here is Captivate will only record that toolbar. Now I'll just quickly show you what this looks like. I'm just going to click record. Now this might be useful if you're going to include this video in another video. So as David asked, if you wanted to take this into Premiere or a video editing software, you could overlay this on top of something else or include it as part of a bigger video. But you'll see I'm just doing a little bit of a software, or a little bit of a toolbar tour, so preferences, mailings, blah, blah, blah. I press end on the keyboard. It's going to end the recording. And now the end result is just the toolbar. So it's the size of that video is quite a long, narrow video, and it's only recorded the movement within that red space. So I don't know when and why you'd use that, but I just wanted to point that out as an option in case you were wondering what that does. So I'm actually going to get out of that. I'm going to close this file. I'm not going to save it, and I'm going to go back and record new video demo. This time application, I'm going to choose custom. If I choose application window, what happens here is that I'm actually adjusting the size of Word, and the red rectangle is following me there. But more often than not, or most of the time, I usually choose custom size. I can set the dimensions of the video, and away we go. Now, a couple of other things here. We've got the option of panning, automatic panning and manual panning. Between you and I'll be completely honest with you here, I've never ever used panning because we can apply panning when we go to edit the video demo. So I'll point this out when we get in there. It gives you a lot more control over what you want to pan or zoom into and when you want to do it. In this particular example, if we choose automatic panning, then Captivate decides when and where to pan. And manual panning, the problem with that is that there's extra things that you have to think about while you're recording. So you've got to pan as well as work through the software. And it's like doing this. Have you ever tried to pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time? Well, it's pretty much the same thing. You're trying to do too many things at once. So my rule of thumb here is don't worry about the panning. Less stuff you have to worry about, the better. Focus on the actual software that you're demonstrating and worry about all of these things in post-production. Narration is good. You've probably seen those YouTube videos where people are talking over the top. It's more natural, it's more conversational, so you can record audio over the top. I can't actually do this right now because my microphone is being used by the webinar, so I can't actually do audio at the same time, but that's just a case of choosing the microphone and then it records over the top. Problem with that is that if you do make a mistake, it's harder to edit, so you might want to consider adding narration at the end, but it's entirely up to you. Also, system audio. If you are recording Netflix, and by the way, you didn't hear this from me, but if you're recording Netflix, then you can record the audio of the movie as well, but you didn't hear that from me. Okay, so are you ready? 3, 2, record. 3, 2, 1. So the thing with video demo is, as I said, this is like a video camera on the monitor. So moving the mouse from side to side is actually being recorded. Everything is being recorded in real time. Now I'm doing this on purpose because I'll show you how you can actually edit this out. So that's fine. But normally with Word, you would start off on the home screen. And for those hardcore Microsoft Word users out there, I like to have my little show hide marker on. That's a good question, David. That can be adjusted in the publishing. So how many frames per second? I think from memory it's 25 or 30, but you can adjust that as part of the output, or maybe even 15, but I'll show you where you can adjust that as you're publishing it. So it does create an MP4 file, the stock standard MP4 file. Okay, so I've got my paragraph marker on, I've got my, I'm in the home ribbon, so it's like I'm starting from scratch. I go to insert, for those of you who know how to insert a table in Word, insert table, and then it's a 3x3 table. And you'll notice even if I go across to here and then down and then back up, every single move that I'm making here is being recorded. It's like a video camera on the monitor. I can't stress that enough. So I click, and then a couple of things here. I'm going to make these rows a little bit wider. And I've got this awesome tool which is distribute rows, which makes all the rows evenly distributed. So you might have learnt something else there as well. And then a bit of shading, and I'm just going to go down and check my script, but I'm going to remove this as part of the edit. And I'm going to go back, and in the last row I'm going to press tab, and that'll give me a brand new row. And look, that's it. So I'm going to press end. So pressing the end key on the keyboard will end the recording. Now you'll notice, I'll get my mouse out of the way, my real mouse, and then you'll notice as I'm going backwards and forwards, that's been recorded. So it is a literal recording of the screen. It takes you through the recording to start off with, so it shows you exactly what it's going to look like, so you can have a bit of a look to see how that's working out. But down the bottom right hand corner, and by the way, while you're in here, you can actually move the playhead along so you can fast forward to see sort of how it looks. But what we're going to do, right down the bottom right hand corner, you've got a couple of options. You can publish straight away, which is the button in the bottom right hand corner with the arrow, so that takes you straight to the publish screen. Or you can go straight to YouTube if you want. But I'm going to click on edit here because I'm going to show you a couple of things. So I'm going to maximize the screen. So the thing to point out here, first of all, up in the top left hand corner, the file type is different to normal Captivate files. So normal Captivate files are CPTX, whereas this is CPVC. So it's a completely different file type. You'll notice that a lot of the options are disabled, so I can't add new slides, I can't apply themes or fluid boxes or interactions. Most of my objects are disabled, so it's very limited as to what I can add, but I can add shapes and I can add images and SWF animations and things over the top if I want to. So for example, I could put in a shape here. And then very similar to the normal Captivate timeline, you do actually have a timeline and you can add new layers as well, which is what I've done when I've added the shape. And the shape will appear at that particular point in the timeline. But a couple of things to point out here is that you still have your zoom in, zoom out of the timeline down the bottom left hand corner. Pressing the home key will move the red playhead back to the beginning, and pressing the end key will take it to the end. The other two little markers that you've got here, there's a yellow marker at the beginning and a yellow marker at the end. By adjusting those, that's the export length. So if I was to publish right now, whatever video appears between those yellow markers will get published. So any video that's in the shaded area doesn't get included as part of the end publish. So that's something to be mindful of as well. If you accidentally move these and you think, oh, what are those for? Then that's actually indicating the beginning of the video that gets published and the end of the video, of the published video. So I'm going to just drag those back to the end. Okay, how are we going for time? Good. Okay, a couple of things. So I was going to remove all of that stuff at the beginning. So I've got all of this going backwards and forwards. So I moved the playhead and probably around here. So what I can do here is you've got these options of, yes, good question. So you've got split and you've got trim. So I'll focus on these at the moment. So say, for example, I wanted to get rid of all of that stuff at the beginning. So what I can do is where the red playhead is, I just click on the split button and I now get a split appearing in the middle. And then what happens is I can click the first part of, or the first section before the split, and you'll see that that actually darkens. So I've got that selected, and if I press delete on the keyboard, it's gone. And can you add additional markers so that you can cut multiple sections? Good question. I'll get to that in a moment, but in actual fact what you could do, and by the way, all of that stuff that I moved from the, or deleted from the beginning, I can now literally pick up that whole layer of video and move it to the beginning. And I'll grab my yellow marker, so that's appearing right at the end there. And now the beginning of the video just starts off at that point there. Okay. Yes, so you can actually, so in answer to the question, I can split, for example, there, I can split there. So you can actually create multiple splits to remove whole sections. So that's one option. I'm just going to undo what I've just done. And then you've got this option also, trim. So if I click trim, what this does is it creates a section whereby you can choose the beginning, the end and the beginning. So everything within that shaded area will get removed. So it gets lifted and removed, and then the remaining bits of video will get joined together. So by setting the trim area and then pressing the trim button, so if I click that, and now that section has literally been taken out, and those two remaining sections have been joined together. So that's another way of removing a section. Before, you could have just created two split points and then selected and deleted, and the trim just creates one trimmed area that you Hi Christine, can you hear me okay? Loud and clear. Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone. Okay, I'm just going to undo there for a minute. So the splitting and the trimming is awesome to take bits out that you may have found yourself, especially if a page was taking a while to load, or if a process within the software was taking a little bit longer than expected to get from one screen to the next. You can obviously take those out to keep the actual demo moving along nice and quickly. A couple of other options that I wanted to point out, which is really cool. Up in the top right hand corner, we've got pan and zoom. So finding the part where I go up into the top left hand corner. So you'll see here I've moved the playhead and it's clicking on the table button. So about there I might want to zoom into that part of the screen. So I can click the pan and zoom button, and from here I can pretty much just click add pan and zoom, and you'll notice that that creates a little magnifying glass icon on the video timer. And from there, what I can do is I can use this little thumbnail view up in the top right hand corner to then highlight the area of the screen that I want to zoom into. And it does keep it in proportion. The proportions are locked. So that's going to zoom into that area. So now if I just go back a little bit, and what I'll also do is I'm just going to zoom actually right into the timeline using my timeline zoomer, and you'll notice that I've got this little icon down here. So as I play this, it's now going to zoom up into that part of the screen like so. And what I can do here is if I want to just slightly adjust when that zoom happens, I can actually click on the little magnifying glass and I can actually move that along like so. So I might want that zoom and pan to happen a little bit earlier, so I can just drag that to the left a little bit, and then that will just adjust when that pan and zoom actually starts. And then of course what I could do here is if I wanted to zoom out just a little bit more, I can add another pan and zoom point here, and then I might want to make that a little bit bigger like so. So you've got the option of actually adding as many pan and zooms as you like, depending on what's going on in the software, and you can move a little bit here and a little bit there and zoom out and move across, etc. So it's quite a neat little feature to focus in on particular parts of the software. A couple of other options here. There's pop-up. So say for example you're in the middle of your demo and all of a sudden you get an Outlook notification or you get a Skype notification coming up. Captivate has been made aware of these types of notifications, and you can clean up any pop-up messages that appear like you have new mail. So that's what that little option does. And it does some magic stuff in the background and just gets rid of those pop-ups, which is pretty cool. And also transitions. What I've actually done in the past is I've actually, say for example, I might go to say here. So the start of a particular process or section within the software, I can split this. I'm just going to move this, moved a little bit too far, just drag that back. So what you can do here is you can actually have a break. So for example, there's a break and I might say, okay, we are now going to look at creating a table. So that appears inside the file like so. It's probably a little bit too long. I'll drag that back. And so what happens here, you'll see that it actually breaks. There's a message, and then it goes back to the video. So you can actually break up your video and create sort of sections with introductions. But the thing that I wanted to point out here is these little diamonds are what's called transition points. So you can actually create, there's all these different transitions where you can add a transition that goes from one split to another. And just to show you how this is going to work, as we go through, there's a transition of the video going down, and then there's another transition coming up. So I just want to point that out, that those transitions are actually applied to those diamonds. Those diamonds that you see there, they're sort of transition points where you actually apply the different types of transitions. Okay, and that's pretty much it for video demos. Obviously you can record audio over the top if you wanted to. So that option is available. And let's have a look at publishing. So if we go into publish, and these are the options that are available. So you can publish to high def, you've got custom. David, to answer your question, if you go into custom, you'll see you can change the frames per second here. By default it's 15. And then you can, I always like to bump this quality right up to 100%, because I do normally take my videos into Premiere and do some stuff and add other callouts and things like that. So there you go. Yeah, I usually bump that right up to 100. So sorry about the audio if we're having audio difficulties here. I'll try and adjust my microphone. Is that better? Okay, so let's have a look at, I'll leave this open. Actually, I will publish this out just so you can see what this looks like. Video demo test. Now, while that's actually publishing, we're going to go next and have a look at the system simulation recording. I'm actually going to cancel that because I think I realize what I've done. I'm going to actually take this yellow marker all the way back there. Now I'm going to publish. Custom 100%. I'm going to bump that up to 30, David, and you can have a look and see what happens there when I change that frame rate to 30 frames per second. I'm going to publish again and publish onto the desktop. So that should hopefully take a little bit quicker to publish. So the next thing we're going to look at is software simulations. Now, the difference between the video demo that we've just done and the software simulation is that when Captivate records a software simulation, it is literally taking a screenshot every time you click the mouse. So any delay or lag between you clicking from one thing to the next isn't actually recorded. So you could sit there for half an hour and not do anything, and Captivate isn't recording half an hour of nothing. It's waiting for you to click, and it actually takes a screenshot every time you click, and then each screenshot is put onto a separate slide as the background of that slide. So That will potentially give you a little bit more flexibility when editing. But what it does also allow you to do is add interactivity and create actual interactive software simulations to give people the experience of using the software or certain processes within the software without giving them live access to the actual system. So this is really good for critical systems, for banking systems, especially when you need to train your users on getting confident and comfortable with the system before you let them loose on the actual live data or the live system within the corporate environment. So my little spiel there has just been long enough to fill in the time it's taken to publish. We'll just have a quick look and see where this is. So this is this file here. So I'm just going to open that up. And you'll notice there that it's opened up. That's full screen. And you can see the quality is really good. So that's why I like to keep the quality quite high. But yeah, there it is. So we can pretty much do whatever we want with that now. We can put that in somewhere else. We can block things out, etc., etc. Okay, so moving right along. Hope everyone's okay out there. I'm going to leave that open, and the next thing we're going to do is record a new software simulation. And I'm actually going to do exactly the same thing that I did before. And the thing that I wanted to point out here is that these options at the top here are exactly the same as I showed you before. So you get a red rectangle, which is the recording area, which Captivate will record whatever's inside that red rectangle. But down the bottom here, we've got a couple of different options available. We've got demo, assessment, training, and custom. So my advice to you, never tick all 4 boxes at the same time. Okay? Don't do it. I'm going to show you why right now. Don't tick all 4 boxes. The reason being is it creates 4 separate files. Now I'm going to leave it at that, and then I'm going to show you why that's a bad idea. And then we'll come back and we'll record one. Another thing with panning, once again, I wouldn't do panning here because Captivate decides when to pan. And if you want to do manual panning, it's just another thing that you have to worry about. I'm not going to worry about panning at the moment. And of course, narration is something that you can record over the top if you want. But look, let's have a look at what happens when we record these 4 things all at the same time. And then what we'll do is we'll have a quick look at settings, because the settings will make a lot more sense once we've seen the finished result of those different modes. Now those 4 modes at the top, or that we ticked, are all represented as separate settings. So each mode has its own set of settings that we can change and we can apply before we actually do anything. But I'll come back and have a look at those in a moment. But let's tick all those 4 boxes, click on record. As I said, don't do that ever, because it's not a good thing. And I'll show you why in a minute. Now, say for example, like I did before, I'm going to move my mouse from side to side. I've just got a telephone call, take a call, I'm still recording. Fortunately, Captivate is not recording every single move you make here. It's only going to record the clicks with the mouse. So if I click once with the mouse, which I'm going to do right now, you probably haven't seen that, but if I click once with the mouse, or even if I click up here with the mouse, Captivate is recording a screenshot every time I do that. So if I go into Insert, Table, now when I do any of this type of movement, what happens here is Captivate tends to create tiny little videos of any movement where there's like a click and a drag. So if I click and then drag, Captivate will create a little mini movie as part of the series of screenshots. So just be mindful of that, because those little interactions are obviously near impossible to edit because they're tiny little SWF files or flash files. So I'm going to click in the last cell. I'm going to press tab, and I can also click and drag. So Captivate will actually record that as a little mini movie. So any clicking and dragging, and then distribute rows. So when I am also showing any going from one page to the next, I try and limit scrolling. So if I click on my scroll bar and drag, that's going to be a little mini movie. So what I tend to do is I will click on the scroll bar down the bottom, or click in the scroll bar area, and then if I want to turn this into an interactive module where I want people to know that they have to scroll, then at least they know that they've got to scroll. Whereas if it was click and drag, you can't actually mimic that in Captivate as an interactive experience. So I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to shade the last row, and there's the shading, and then press end on the keyboard and wait for it. Don't forget, we pressed all 4 boxes, and if you look closely at the top here, I've now got 4 files. I've got an untitled demo, untitled assessment, untitled training, and untitled custom. Here's the problem. If you find that you have to do some editing on one, so say for example I decided, okay, well I wanted to remove these 3 slides. So I removed those 3 slides. I've then got to go into these other files and do the same edit. So it's like you've got to, if you're doing any editing or if you've got to update any wording within one of the files, then chances are that you'll have to update the wording in another file. Now, what's the difference between those? That's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked. So a demo is, you'll notice here, if you look at each individual slide, which is the screenshot, as I said, Captivate creates a screenshot. Each slide is 3 seconds long, apart from the ones that, not 3 seconds, but most of them are 3 seconds. You'll notice this one's 3 seconds. So by default, most of the slides here are 3 seconds. And it's got a mouse on the screen, but there's no click boxes. So if I go to preview this, so this is the demo, by the way. This is the stock standard out of the box Captivate demo. If I go to preview this in the browser, I can just sit back, I can grab my popcorn, and I can watch the demonstration happen in front of me. Similar to a video demo, whereas this is a lot more controlled. The mouse movement has been added by Captivate as the shortest possible path from one click to the next. It's not your actual mouse movement that you did on the screen. Captivate is putting in its own mouse movement from one button to the next. And you'll notice that it's actually moving the shortest path, and you'll see what it's doing there. I'm just sitting back, I'm not even touching it. This is the demo that Captivate created. That's a little video loading. So that's part of the demo that had the video. But all of these are just individual screenshots that are showing a screen as it was when I clicked at that particular point. And you'll notice that Captivate automatically puts wording in for you. So it uses the word select, it uses certain words, and then it picks up the name of the tool to fill in the name of the wording on the actual call out. So pretty good. The thing that I like about this type of demo is that you've got these call outs already in there. You've got half the wording already done for you. It gives you a little bit more control over editing because you can just remove slides. You can adjust the length of slides, etc., etc. You do also get these highlight boxes, which are pretty cool. So what I'm going to do now, so that's the example of the demo. Oops. Let's have a look at an example of the assessment. So this is where so Captivate's created an interactive simulation where it's up to the user to actually click on the buttons in order to continue. And if you look closely on each slide, by default there's a click box. So Captivate will put a click box on the menu item that will actually need to be clicked on in order to progress. Now the thing with the assessment also, there's no hints or there's no tips or tricks along the way. The user has to know where they're going. So just to show you this, we're going to preview this in the browser. So these are all the out-of-the-box settings that Captivate does when you tick those boxes. So this is the assessment box. If we only had the assessment box ticked, this is the only file that would have been created. But let's have a look. So if you, so you'll notice that it's stopped, it's not going anywhere. So if I click somewhere, that's a failure message. So I actually have to click, I've got to know where to click. So I really have to know what I'm meant to be doing in order to progress. And I can't even remember where I clicked. I think it was somewhere around here. With the play bar, I can actually press the forward button. So up here, I've got to click on yellow. So if I click on yellow, you'll now notice that, and I think I did undo, and then insert, and then table. So I'm actually pressing on these buttons in order to get anywhere. So the assessment was a way of testing people on how to work through that process. So look, you can actually create, and I'm going to show you how to do this. You can actually create assessments and training from a demo, and I do recommend that, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Let's have a look and see what the difference between an assessment and training is. So with assessment, all you get here, and I'll show you what happens here, I'm going to select that click box, and while I've got the click box selected, if I go into the properties of that click box, you'll see I've got a failure message. So that failure message is stock standard with an assessment. So if I go to any slide that has a click box, I'll try this one, looking for a slide with a click box. No, oh, there we go, so click box. So if I click on that click box, and you'll see there that the only display is a failure. So it's feedback for the user that they didn't click on that click box, and the failure message is telling them what to do. The thing with these click boxes as well is that you can include them in the quiz. So there is reporting that can get reported to a learning management system, which is good, and that's actually set on by default. Let's have a quick look at training. The difference between assessment and training is that in training, pretty much exactly the same, but instead of just having failure messages, you also have a hint message as well. So to be honest with you, the only difference between assessment and training is that you get a hint as well as the failure message. So if I go to another slide with a click box, and you'll notice that I get hint. So really, the only difference is you get a hint as well as the failure message, and you get a click box as well. Custom, you don't get anything. You just get slide movements. You don't even get a mouse. You don't even get anything like that. So if I was to preview a custom software simulation setting, you'll notice it'll look pretty strange, but if you notice that when it previews, and it'll just work through it, but there's no mouse. So it does actually work its way through. You'll see things are just happening on the screen, but I can't follow a mouse to see exactly where it's going. So it sort of gives you a bit of a blank canvas for you to then add your own things from the blank canvas, so to speak. Okay, now a couple of things to point out. First of all, I'm going to go back to the demo. I'm going to close these. Actually, I'll leave them open. I want to show you something in a minute. I'm going to go back to the demo. And a demo is a good place to start, because what we could do here is, as we work our way through and do our edits, so say for example I wanted to take these slides out, so I'm just going to delete these slides, press delete, delete. So I actually want to start on this slide. then in actual fact, once I'd done all of my editing, and I might want to adjust the colors here. So say I wanted to change the color. I might like this purple color. If I wanted to update all of the captions with that color, all I need to do is use my style, because by default it's the default Smart Shape style. And then all I need to do is, with that change that I've just made, there's a little plus sign next to the style name. So if I just go to my little options menu next to style name, and then I save changes to the existing style, override that style, click on OK, and now all of my callouts will be purple. There we go. So they're all purple now. So that's a quick way of changing the color of the callouts. So once I've made all of the changes, then obviously I can save that, call this demo. And once I've made the changes, if I then want to create an assessment out of this, what I can do is I can add my own click boxes, or depending on how much of an edit that I've actually made, I could keep this one open in the background. And if I didn't actually make too many edits, then obviously I could keep this because all my click boxes are already in there. So the thing to be mindful of is, if you do go ahead and create 4 files all at once, you've got editing to do across 4 files, or you can just stick with the one file, create that as your master, and then go ahead and add your click boxes and so forth to your demo, and then just file save as, and then just call this one assessment, for example. So you can start to add the different objects to make the assessment to the file and then save it as the assessment. So have a think about it. Depends on how planned you are and how fluid your recording was, but they're the different options that are available. I'm going to close these down without saving. I'm just going to show you a couple of other things just to finish off, a few little tips and tricks that I've got up my sleeve. Now, these highlight boxes. So I'm going to preview this. I just want to point something out. This is a pretty cool little trick. You may not know this about highlight boxes, but by default, highlight boxes will shade the actual box, so it becomes like so you see the blue box up there, that's the highlight box, and it only highlights or shades the what's within the box. But what I tend to do is, with highlight boxes, I'll do what's called fill outer area. Now, you may not have seen this before, but what this does is it shades out everything else around the highlight box and just shows the middle of the highlight box as clear, unshaded. So let's have a look and see how this works. So I'm going to fill outer area. I'm going to change this to white, because I've actually used white before, about 50%. And because I've changed the style, I'm going to save changes to the existing style, which means all of these changes will actually apply to all of the highlight boxes in the whole simulation. So let's do a quick preview and I'll show you how this works. So filling the outer area of a highlight box is quite good, especially if the software that you're demonstrating is quite busy and you really want people to focus on a particular area. So you'll see how the rest of the screen has actually become shaded out. So that's quite good if you really want to that's right, Sharon, yes. The highlight box is good for simulations and not in the video demo. That's right. You can, if you want, just in extending your question, Sharon, this particular demo, because it's a demo without any interactions, I can actually publish this as a movie, so as a video. So I could actually publish it as an MP4, and I could actually then take that into Premiere or one of those and treat it as though it was a video demo, similar to what we looked at before. So you can create a video file out of this type of Captivate file. So that's something you could even consider. Rightio. Now, a couple of other things that I wanted to point out. Yes, definitely fix up the timings. We don't have time to go through fixing up the timings, but absolutely. So that's, for those of you who've used Captivate, you do spend a lot of your time adjusting timings of slides and objects and things like that. So obviously it's a case-by-case scenario, so please, yes, you would adjust all your timings. That's something you would definitely do. Here's something that I want to point out. Sometimes when you're on company software, there might be parts of the screen that you don't want to be made public. So just hypothetically here, I've got my name up in the top right-hand corner. Say I want to block that out. I could just get a shape like so, and I could just put a shape over the top of that. The fill of that shape, I get my eyedropper to become the same color as the software and the stroke like so. And what I can do here is I can time that shape for the rest of the project. So that's one thing I could do. Another thing that I can do is I can actually, and if you look closely, now if you go from slide to slide, my name's not there. So if you do need to hide stuff, it's quite simple to just add a shape. Or say, for example, you wanted to find the actual screen that's being represented in this background. Now, this is another cool trick. The actual screen image doesn't exist as a layer, so it's actually on the slide background itself. And if I go to the library, you'll see you've got all these backgrounds. So which one is it? Here's a quick little trick. I'll give this one to you for free. So this is my gift to you. If you right mouse click on the slide and you've got the option Find Background in Library. So if you click on that, it immediately highlights that asset. So if I drag this into the slide, and then that's actually exactly the same image. And then I could potentially edit this image. I could crop it if I wanted to, do something by covering something up. I can do a little bit of a patchwork here. So you can do a little bit of band-aiding if you have to over the system, especially if you don't want to go back and re-record it. Can you attach the shape so it stays while panning and zooming? Yes, so what I could do here, for example, David, if I could then right mouse click on this, I can merge with background, so that then becomes part of the background, and then any panning and zooming that I do would then be done on that particular slide. So yes, you can merge shapes and so forth, and I could have even done that with what was over my name there. Okay, 3 minutes to go. I've saved the best till last. Are you ready? And here we go. So say, for example, and this is going back to the file that I used in the last webinar, and this is a responsive file. Okay, so this is done, this has it doesn't even have fluid boxes, but it's responsive. So Captivate knows it's responsive. I can add fluid boxes if I want. Say, for example, I want to add a software simulation to a responsive project, and I would potentially like this software simulation to work on a mobile phone. Yes, and it's being recorded. So let's have a look and see how this works. Captivate's got a really neat little trick here to be able to show software simulations and demonstrations in a mobile environment. Are you ready? Have you got your seatbelts on? So what I'm going to do is I'll go back to the beginning and I'll record it from here. And we're going to, we're in a responsive project. I'm going to click on slides. I'm going to click on software simulation. After slide 1, click on OK. It's an automatic software simulation. Now what it's done also is by default the red rectangle is the size of the Captivate stage. Okay, so I can't actually change that size, but I can snap the software into the red rectangle. And what I'm going to do here is I'm now going to record. 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to insert table, la la la. Now I'm going to go all the way over to this side of the screen, and I'm going to click some buttons over here and blah blah blah. So let's have a look and see how Captivate handles a portrait software simulation inside a landscape software simulation inside a portrait mobile device. Okay, when we go to the slides that are the software simulation, you'll see here we've got this blue square. And over on the right hand side, we've got this option that says use portion of background image. So what's going to happen here is if this particular Captivate file was being viewed through a mobile device, whatever is inside the blue square will get displayed. Okay, so if I go and do iPhone 6 portrait, that white area is what's going to be displayed. So at least I now have the opportunity to potentially make software simulations responsive and visible inside a mobile phone. If I go to the next one, and you'll notice that by default Captivate's moving this area around depending on where I clicked, and I might want to move this one back a little bit because I'm clicking on that button there, so it might need to do a few little adjustments. But essentially, this is what's going to happen. I might want to move that over there like so. So I just wanted to point that out to you in case you're wondering what that is. That will only be displayed, or that option is only available if you are recording a software simulation inside a responsive project. And you've got this option here, use portion of background image. That's what that means. And by the way, one other trick is if I just insert a brand new slide, I'm just going to show you something here. And if I put in, say for example, I put in this image here, you'll notice that this, if you just put in a normal slide, I don't actually get that option of use portion of background image. So if I haven't used fluid boxes, you'll now notice that if the screen is responsive, then the image is not doing what I'd really like it to do. And if I also made this image merge with the background, the problem with this is that now as the screen's going responsive, the image squashes. So here is my ultimate tip for you today. What I can do is I can take a slide that is recorded as a software simulation, because this option, use portion of background image, is only available for slides that are recorded as a software simulation. Check this out. I'm going to duplicate this slide. I'm going to remove the background, which was the software. Actually, I'm not going to remove the background because that will actually remove that option. I'm just going to change the background to my splash. And I now have that functionality available just for a normal screen with an image on it. So if my slide does end up becoming responsive, then I can be specific about what part of the image will be displayed on that view on that device. So I wanted to point out that slides that software simulation slides that are inserted in a responsive project will have this option available. Normal slides don't have that option available, but if you want that option available for normal slides, you need to duplicate a software simulation slide. you need to change the background. Don't delete it because you'll delete that option. You just need to change the background, and then you still have that functionality available even though it's not a software simulation slide anymore. So hopefully that was worth the 1 hour wait. Is there an instance where you would use another recording tool such as Camtasia instead of Captivate? Absolutely, Marty, you could. You could create a software demo in another tool. You could export that if you wanted to as a video file, and then inside any Captivate file you can insert videos. So you can actually insert that published MP4 back into Captivate, or you can just, there are so many tools out there that really at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to personal preference. I'm not here to preach or anything like that. If you have a preferred tool, absolutely. Hopefully in the hour that we've had, we've gone through the differences between what a software simulation is and what a video demo is. And if you want a software simulation to be available on a tablet or phone, you would use this format to then record rather than a simulation. If I wanted a software simulation available on a phone or a tablet, I would actually create a responsive project like so. So I've got a blank responsive project, and then I would add slides and I would add the software simulation or record the software simulation from within the responsive project. So then at least you have the option available where you've got that movable screen, which allows you to specify what options are available, or what viewing area is available from slide to slide when viewed through a mobile device. Once again, just showing you this here. Brand new responsive project. You'll now notice that I've got this blue outline. So that's sort of the viewable area when viewed portrait on a phone, and you'll notice that that's how it will be displayed in a phone. So you just might need to do a little bit of readjustment of callouts perhaps. You'd move the callouts around like so, and then yeah, just do a little bit of adjustment that way. But that's the golden egg for today. Is the non-blue area visible if the user zooms out of their mobile phone? So there's no pinch and zoom in this particular case. So this is just a video demo from one slide to the next. So it really only just focuses on that area. So whatever's inside the white area outside the shaded bit, but you'll notice that this blue square will indicate what's visible when viewed through a mobile device portrait, for example. If I do landscape, then at least it's a little bit wider, so just be mindful of that. Okay. Actually, while you're here, there is a way of testing. I do thoroughly recommend you use Google Chrome. There's a mobile testing functionality inside Chrome, so you can test your browsers and your devices using Google Chrome, or even Firefox has mobile browser testing as well. So I think it's lunchtime. Happy to hang back and answer any questions, so I'll hang around. But thanks very much for joining us.